Hello.
Isn't that timing, Houston? It's like when you hit start, there's like a 5-second delay. When do you?
No.
I think you timed it well. Welcome, everyone.
You see the attendees go up, and you're just not quite sure. It almost feels like people are going single file through a door. You know, you would think it's just instant. People are like waiting, and then they come in, but
not always.
But I think Zoom is like, it's like maybe it's like double doors, like lunch is starting and there's, you know.
Well, welcome everyone. Where are you? Where are you watching from today? This is like, yeah, Maryland. Emily's in first.
Hey, Emily.
Michigan, still in the finals. What, Final Four?
Jessica's here.
They play tonight. It's Vegas, Selah, Washington. Oh my goodness, here it comes. Idaho, South Dakota, Malibu. Katie.
Malibu? Wait, California?
I love California. Rye, New Hampshire. Keller, Texas. Minneapolis. This is my favorite part. He's in Newburgh, Oregon.
Chicago suburbs.
Which
suburb, Lynn?
Wenatchee. Always in the house, Wenatchee. I love it.
New Jersey. Lynn is New Jersey with an exclamation point. It's an enthusiastic New Jersey.
Susan, I see you there. Thanks for the message this morning. Battleground.
Temple, Texas. Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Hey, Susan. All in caps. I feel that. I feel your energy as if we were in person again. Remember 4 years ago? Last time we saw each other.
Oof.
Drinking coffee. Yes, Susan. Come on. You know me.
Bobby, welcome from California. We're close to each other. Vancouver, Washington, hello.
Welcome, Trisha. So
Akron, Ohio. Girl, my mom is from Ohio. Got Ohio in my blood.
Hey, Darlene. It's been a while. That's great.
Forks.
Texas. Deer Park, Washington in the house.
Ontario, Canada. It's always good when we go officially international.
And St. Paul, Minnesota. We got a hockey
ISD. Cambridgeshire, England in the building. Hello, Ruth. From across the pond. Hi.
Portland, North Carolina. This is so fun. Bellevue rocks. I love it. Yay.
That's from Ashvini, one of our student advisory board students here.
Memphis, Tennessee, New Jersey.
Jessica, that's my buddy. Jessica, also here from England.
Julie, right next door to where I am. Julie, I love that when we put PL up, we have to put like disclaimers like just outside Tacoma.
Growing up in Washington, you get used to those things.
Yes.
People outside of Washington are like, I don't know where you're from exactly.
Although my friends in Canada know the old like little commercial, like do the Puyallup when it came to the fair. They like all would sing it. They're like, I know Puyallup because the old fair song.
John, this might be our first person joining us from France. Hello from Paris. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Probably bonsoir, actually.
My son is named after two different Brents in my life, one of which played professional hockey in France. Recently, this last week, sent his old professional hockey jersey from France that he actually used in games. So it's pretty special. I wish I could like throw out the name. I don't know if it's still a team, but kind of special.
That is special. That's really cool.
All right, John, let's do this.
Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. So fun to share space with you. Happy Tuesday. Happy near end of March. Happy 2021. We think. We're still unsure. Time is moving quickly and slowly at the same time. But I'm so grateful that we get to spend this short amount of time together. My name is Houston. I'm one of the co-founders of CharacterStrong, and I get to share virtual space today with John, my other co-founder. And today, we're talking about the SEL, Social Emotional Learning Revolution. It's a sneak peek at CharacterStrong's 2021 curriculum for middle school and high school. So if you're looking for that secondary SEL, you're looking at it the district-wide lens, or you're just interested in some of the ways that we're thinking about social emotional learning in the present realities of the world, you're in the right place. start with a question, John. What do you think?
Yeah, let's start. Let's get you engaging in the chat. Just like we would in our lessons, we always have a start intentionally type of questions, a starter exercise, an entry task. So here's your entry task today. What is something that would help make implementing social emotional learning easier? If people, awareness is really one of the first responses that came in, Houston. That is a big part of the implementation work we do. It's about increasing awareness, knowledge, and motivation. So increasing awareness, admin support, teacher buy-in. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Is it buy-in or is it readiness? Both are a thing, but which one is actually the bigger thing? More time in the day? Yep. Time? Yep. Administrative support, student family engagement, time. Administrator buy-in, time. Wait, have you heard of time, Houston, before?
Yes.
Everyone would see the importance. Yep. Buy-in, kids face-to-face.
Ashvini, one of our student advisory board panelists, an 11th grader from Washington, great reflection, creating a class community from the get-go.
Truth. Intentional implementation. Ease to teachers, right? Flexible with the time that it could be. We'll talk about that today with how it could be implemented. It's not just rigid. It has to be this exact amount of time. Yeah, removal of the attitude, not my job. We're going to talk about the importance of the adult piece. The key to all of this is the adults. It's actually not the curricula. You know that. You're in the work.
Speaking of that, John, it's sort of the philosophy that we approach the work from, yeah?
Absolutely. I think here are a few things. Just to start off, everything at CharacterStrong, because we come from the work. So many have been in the classroom, overseeing the work at the district level. I was in the classroom at the high school level for over a decade, which is one of the hardest places to get traction with social emotional learning. The older students get, the more intentional we have to be, especially with it not feeling like it's being done to them. But also the key is it's got to be designed for those adults, right? And so everything that we do goes through this, what we call kind of filter of low high. It needs to be as low burden as possible with the opportunity for high impact. So here are some of the things that make CharacterStrong unique. We get asked that a lot. I'm on calls daily with schools, whether it's district administrators, school principals, directors of guidance and counseling, you name it. Every day we're talking about how can we implement this most effectively. And sometimes the question comes up, what makes CharacterStrong unique? Well, I'll be really straightforward with what makes us unique. Number one, we started focused on the secondary level. It's usually reverse. It's usually that social emotional learning has lived at the elementary level for so many years. In fact, there's a lot of offerings at the elementary level. There is some at the middle level. There is not a lot at the high school level, especially that is engaging and relevant, that would bring significance to this work. So we started focus there because we knew that there was a huge gap. That's why we're so excited to showcase once again the updates that we have made to this curricula, something that was designed not just for a secondary age student, but something that was also designed specifically for a secondary educator. That's huge, right? As educators get, the older students get, right, the more that educators become more content focused, this number one cannot come across as one more prep. So I think number one, we started focus on the secondary level. Number two, it's our huge focus on the adult work that is needed. It's the adult readiness more than it is buy-in. We've trained thousands of educators, even since COVID had started. And it's actually not a buy-in issue. The vast number of educators understand the importance of this work. There are some in every building, we get it. But the real question that is in every building, how do we do it with everything else that's on our plates? That is a question of readiness. I think the most important work we are doing is the adult readiness work. That means trainings that we can help to support, to train your staff. So that's a big one. The third one I would just say is the intentional work around ongoing implementation. How do we get past the famous line of this too shall pass? I would say two big areas. Number one, the adult readiness work. Number two, we got to support your building-wide implementation teams with what is not only best practice, but guide them through that process. What are your next 3 steps? Great. Now, what are your next 3 steps after that? Because there's so much going on and they wear so many different hats that you can so quickly get into what we call implementation drift. Our work with Dr. Clayton Cook at the University of Minnesota, we're really digging into that implementation work and creating an implementation roadmap that will automatically show up with this curricula. That's a different webinar, but coming this spring to guide your teams through this process. So there's multiple things, but everything goes through that lens. Low burden with the opportunity of high impact.
Just to role model what that looks like in a very relational sense, I'm going to call up Trisha Hackfield here to join us as a panelist. Let's see if we can bring Trisha's video on. All right. And Trisha, are you here? I'll try one more time. Trisha, can you hear us okay? Always the delay, the Zoom delay.
Let's do this in the chat as Houston's looking to bring Trisha up. Oh, there you go. Did you hear it? Yay, I see it.
Hi, Trisha.
Hi.
Welcome.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
Thanks for being willing to volunteer. Where are you joining us from today?
Aledo High School in Aledo, Texas.
Nice. Well, welcome to our Texas friends. And Trisha, I don't know if you've had an experience with this before, but one of the things we believe in really deeply at CharacterStrong is relationships first, right? It's the foundation of everything that we do. But we also believe that making it really accessible to create easy opportunities to connect and also bring through choice. Choice is a key component here, right? Students in particular, but all of us have had so many choices removed from us that giving any opportunity for choice-based learning to me is an important ingredient in the success of this work. So the idea here is you get to choose, Trisha, which of these 3 activities you'd like to play today to allow us to get to know you just a little bit better.
Ooh, I'll do Would You Rather. It's an easy one.
Rather. It's a good one. So I click on Would You Rather and it brings up a few more options. Now you get to choose 1, 2, or 3 to reveal a prompt.
2.
2. All right, Trisha. And folks in the chat, you can be responding alongside Trisha. You can just hit 1 or 2, but the Would You Rather is go back to age 5 with everything you know now, or currently know everything your future self will learn.
2 for sure.
2 for sure. Tell us why.
There's a lot between age 5 and 43 that I don't really want to relive without with knowledge or without. And so where I am now is a really sweet spot that I could probably benefit from extra knowledge, but definitely don't want to revisit, middle school pretty much.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a great justification, Trisha. How about this question? If 2 is your preference, what is something that you think you'll be learning in the next 10, 20 years that you're like really would be excited to know now?
I'm going to go with how to parent a very strong-willed daughter in her teen years, because right now she's 10. So I'm sure that I'm going to figure that out as I've been in high school education for almost 20 years now. But the parenting side of that, and so the empathy part of that is very easy for me, but the parenting side of that, where consequences are involved. So that's what I feel like I'm going to be really knowledgeable about. Maybe I could even write a book, but that's what I feel like I could learn.
Well said, Trisha. It sounds like there are people in the chat who agree with you. Christy here says, same. My guess is you're not the only one. Maybe there's even people in the chat who can make this hypothetical thing come true. Maybe they can provide a couple of tips to you to connect. Well, really grateful to meet you, Trisha. Thanks for being willing to volunteer just to show how this works. And thanks for all your work for 20 years in secondary education. That's amazing. We're glad you're here. All right. I love that answer.
Houston knowing what I know now as a 41-year-old when I know at 5 and what that might do to me. I don't know. I got to go too.
Fair enough. So you can see how this kind of works, right? Just a simple practice, but the idea we'll get into and showcase more here soon is at the beginning of all of our lessons, a focus on relationships first, even if it doesn't take much time, even if it's just one person who gets a chance to share, you as the educator getting a chance to share, turn and talk and share, giving students choice and vehicles to connect in meaningful ways is a big piece of this puzzle. So let's talk about this puzzle, this thing that we are trying to create at large. This main sort of section of today is thinking about, it's just showcasing how we built this, right? From a philosophical lens, what are the inputs that we're trying to put into it? And on the far side of that, we'll get to showcase a couple of outputs that I'm really excited to bring forward to you today, including a couple of surprise guests along the way. So let's first talk about what are the big pieces of the puzzle, John.
Yeah, and people have already done it. Houston, I don't know if we explicitly did. Yeah, drop your questions. I think someone, Kelty on our team did. Any questions that were just dropped, like someone just asked, like the slide decks, are they a part of like the curricula? Yes, and we do have also kind of overview slide decks that are included. So drop those questions. Our team's actually going to be pulling them into a document for us so we don't miss any of them. And we will make time either during, but especially at the end to answer questions as they come. So yeah, here are the core components. Here are things, ways that we are supporting schools, because it's never just about the curricula. Today, we are going to really be digging in and showing specifics about the update that we recently made to the curricula to stay engaging and relevant, especially at the secondary age level. You got to update. It's got to feel fresh. So we're going to talk about that today. We do have a student leadership piece. The idea there is, how do we take a smaller group of students, and this is key, ideally who are representative of your student population, so not just by popular vote. And because those students are getting more mentorship, more training, we've got 2 curriculas that middle school, high schools will use. They're more likely to demonstrate those pro-social behaviors that we want to see school-wide. Number 3, we talk about school-wide integration. So this connects to the implementation piece. But how do we really integrate this into even what we're already doing? Braiding is a good term. If a school says, well, we're a PBIS school, as if it's one or the other, that's wrong thinking. It's not one or the other. It's how does it braid together? Because both are a part of a really strong set of tier 1 foundational supports, along with adult relational practices. Number 4, we teach to that. The key to all of this is the adults. The number one way we're going to teach is to role model. So those full staff trainings, not just one time before you start the very first time, but at any point along the way, we can provide. And so that adult relational piece is huge. And then finally, those implementation supports that I alluded to earlier. And not just talking a big game, like this could be like really drilling down and being a guide. And we're going to be including the implementation roadmap this spring. It's going to be a huge move. We're excited about talking more about that as it comes. But today, we're really focusing on the explicit teaching of social emotional learning in our middle school and high schools. In terms of breaking down the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about today, at the middle level, it's 35 lessons per grade level, 6 through 8, that are all vertically aligned. So that's really important to note. They're not the same lessons each year or each week. They build upon themselves. There's slide decks that will be in both English and in Spanish. It's always been that way for our curricula. At the high school level, it's 25 lessons per grade level, 9 through 12, also that are all vertically aligned. So the secondary level, you've got a 6th through 12th grade completely vertically aligned set of lessons. The students, they'll talk about them, call them sessions. They'll be getting more into that, but the way that we know it a lot of times at the district level or building level is this is how it's laid out in terms of the structure.
So what are the challenges of building curriculum for the current realities of the world? Well, we think about it as in 3 big buckets, and maybe you do as well. The first one is research, right? What does the research tell us that we can actually impact and inform? What would research say is making things effective? Let's also think about the reality of people in the work, the reality of 2020 and 2021 and how it's changed the shape and the landscape of education, of how people receive education and the demands that have always been high on your time, but even increasingly so right now. And then how do we make sure that it is relevant to that point around 2020, around 2021, around even people sharing in the chat things that are happening in our world that students want to talk about, that have real implications for student realities and student life. How do we make sure that our content is engaging and relevant? So here's the problem when trying to design curriculum using these three circles in a little Venn diagram. You see that sometimes we hit 2 out of the 3. Where reality and relevance meet and we are missing research, we would think about this as high intentions, low impact. We can really want to do good work. We can really want to support students in certain areas of their social and emotional development. But the research is stronger in some areas than others in terms of what we can actually impact, particularly with a constrained amount of time. Let's say that you're a school, like many schools, that deliver this content in like a 30-minute per week type of vehicle. In that case, the reality is we're only able to deliver so much dosage or time around a certain skill. And some skills need more and less. And so we have to think through that lens. Even though we can really want to impact something, our high intentions don't always directly translate to that impact. Number 2, where research and relevance intersect, but it is dismissive of the reality. It can be highly effective through the research, but not very effective in terms of implementation. These are the programs that sometimes we say, like, it would work if you do it in this perfect environment. If you had 3 hours a day, if you had this robust team constantly supporting and delivering around these promises. But the reality for so many educators is that many of them are going to look at some of these slides or this lesson just before it gets delivered. When we're thinking about a tier 1 curriculum, we are asking ourselves that question constantly. How do we make sure that every teacher, every educator in the building is capable of delivering this in a way that meets their day-to-day needs? We know that not every educator is trained to talk deeply about things like well-being or mental health. So how do we provide content through the lessons, through different vehicles to reduce the burden on the educator themselves to teach to some of those things? And the last intersection, reality and research, missing relevance. To me, this is one I feel really passionate about. It can be a highly regarded thing, but have low engagement. Why? Well, because the research done on the program was done 10 years ago, was done 5 years ago. And then things like 2020 happened. And the content no longer, no matter how well researched it was, no matter what the results were at the time, the content is no longer engaging and relevant. The content does not meet the moment. And if it does not meet the moment, it does not meet our students' needs. So the sweet spot, that's what we're aiming for, right? In the intersection of those 3 things where reality, research, and relevance meets, that's what we're trying to create. So through that lens, what does that mean? Well, it means that there are 3 outcomes that we believe are able to meet those 3 components. The first one, well-being. It would be a miss if our curriculum update did not include content on mental health. But it's hard. It's a tough and delicate subject to balance. And we know that not all educators feel comfortable or feel equipped to have some of those conversations. So the approach CharacterStrong is taking is a focus on well-being, meaning what are the preventative things that we can control, right? Without being dismissive of things like mental illness. To say it is possible for you to be struggling with things like anxiety or depression and still have mental health. In fact, with our student advisory board students, this was a message that was really important to them. They thought it was really important for us to speak out loud that statement, that you can be struggling over here with mental illness, but still have really good mental health. In fact, the research would say that someone who has mental illness, but has high mental health is actually sometimes more content, successful, happy than the person who has low mental health and no mental illness. So how do we address the things that we can control? Through that lens of prevention, well-being, mental, social, and emotional well-being, those proactive, healthy coping strategies that we can equip young people with. That is one of the outcomes we're aiming towards. The second one is belonging. In the context of our current realities of our world, we have to focus on empathy. We have to focus on connection. We have to focus on creating psychological safety in a world, in a country where so many people are feeling anything but that. How do we create a classroom culture with psychological safety at the center of it? so people can experience acceptance and belonging, which we know leads to the third thing, engagement. Engagement not only academically, which we know is important, but also socially. How do I turn back to my school, my classroom, make my classroom a better place, engage in my school to make it a better place, engage in my community or the world to improve what that looks like? So if you were to take these three outcomes, we might say to ourselves, how do we arrive there? How do we work backwards from these three outcomes? What do we know through research, what's relevant and what the reality is? What inputs do we need to insert in order to create the output? So let's work backwards. Right? Learning has to do with knowing and doing. So from the knowing standpoint, here are the 5 ingredients that are at the center of all that we're doing grades 6 through 12. The first one is emotion understanding. Second one's empathy. Third one is values clarification, not prescriptive values. This is how you're supposed to be, but allowing students space to clarify for themselves, who do they want to be? The goals and the clarification process of where we want to go in our life. And the last one is leadership, which at CharacterStrong we would define as influence. We would say that every single student in your building is a leader. So helping them develop that personal sense of agency is one piece of this puzzle. Learning is about knowing and doing, so let's talk about how those apply into actual actions. CharacterStrong, we talk and believe and think a lot about the combination of social emotional learning and character development. We would say it like this: character is the behavioral action informed by social emotional skills. Things that I know are going to inform the things that I do or how I act in the world. So let's talk about the doing piece. Well, if I understand my emotions, it leads to being able more effectively to regulate those emotions. When I develop a sense of empathy, it can, if we teach to it, create opportunities for compassion, caring actions in the world. Our values, clarifying who we want to be, are going to determine our purpose, right? That clarity of purpose that we know is essential for people to make challenging decisions through adversity in their life. Our goals are only achieved through consistent behavioral actions. Our habits are the small actions that help us get to big dreams. And last, why it's important to know who I am for myself and to developing an own sense of agency. At the end of the day, whether we like it or not, we are always in community in this world. So what does it look like to effectively work alongside others to improve our class, our school, our community, in the world? So speaking at a high level, just want to speak through at least the process of how we're getting here. What are the ingredients we're putting into this recipe in order to create the outcomes we're aiming towards? Well-being, belonging, and engagement. Character, Katrina, is the behavioral action informed by social emotional skills. Right? It's the knowing and the doing. And at the end of the day, CharacterStrong believes in school culture change. We say culture is behavior. It's the way people show up and engage with each other and treat each other daily. So if we're going to change behavior in any capacity, we have to teach the things that live beneath it first. To zoom out even one more level before we zoom back in, there is a through line through this whole process. Equity, we believe, is both a process and an outcome. Meaning, what are we doing not only to create outcomes that are rooted in the principles of equity, to think towards the idea of creating a more just and compassionate world? How do we teach people to bring people into belonging? How do we teach people to understand what it means to others? And how to reverse that to create a sense of empathy or belonging in a space? How do we equip young people to be leaders in their school and community, to change or fix broken systems? Those are the outcomes that we believe are rooted in equity. But today, I want to talk about the process, a process that allows us to build an equitable curriculum, using the principles of equity to inform how it gets built in the first place. Let's see if I can explain. We'll start with how we're thinking about these things as stories. Oh, John, we get you muted.
Yep. I didn't want to, as I was typing answers, have you listening to my typing. Lots of great questions in the chat, by the way. As I dig into this, Houston, because it was timely and I didn't want to interrupt, I think there's an important note when you think about selecting a social emotional learning curricula. A lot of times, and I used to be at the district level where I was the program administrator for the whole child, and it was a lot of these types of discussions that sometimes we get locked into just like one area, like what's the evidence? What's the evidence? And I would really encourage the group, especially as you look at, updates that are made. And you mentioned it, Houston, when you had the kind of the Venn diagram that was up. One of the things that I'll send to people who reach out is information from the National Implementation Research Network, or NERN, great name, NERN. But they talk about, like, when we're selecting, we really should be looking at it through multiple lenses. And it kind of explains that Venn diagram, but it's like supports, like what supports are offered, right? So that it actually can get past the first week, the first month. Usability, need, fit, capacity, and then evidence. Evidence is one of multiple things that we need to be looking at in regards to selecting. You think about, you could have the most, as you're just going back, research back thing there is. If it's not engaging and relevant for a high school student, good luck. And I just don't want to skip past that too far. That is a big deal. And anybody who's ever taught a high school age student knows exactly what I'm talking about. And so when we look at this in regards to the story aspect that you're mentioning, we learn best through story. We're wired for story. And so we want each grade level, or with each grade level, we've taken one of those outcomes. Even though all of the outcomes are addressed that you discussed in each grade level, we've taken one of them, and then we've built a story around it. So we take these essential questions for each grade level and build a story, a narrative around it. So with grade 6, it's the narratives around belonging. How can we create a place where everyone feels like they belong? Whereas in grade 8, it's more around engagement. How do we practice engaging meaningfully in our lives, our friendships, and in our school? So we do that not only 6 through 8, but also 9 through 12. I just want to kind of zero in on one really key thing, and that is the transition years, first and foremost. So a lot of times that's grade 6 and grade 9, but we also work with a lot of schools where that's not the transition year, and we can work with you. We always encourage you to set up a call if that's not your transition year. But either way, the transition years, they matter a lot. If we could curb a lot of the not good things happening in the transition years, it would solve many issues that we see later on, right? So we've really intentionally created curricula around those transition years that is built for them. On the other end, though, just as critical is the oldest students. They're a lot of times the hardest to get on board. So whether that's, for example, the 8th grade at the middle level, or at the high school level, 12th grade, very unique to them, we move into that leadership piece. The question, how can we work to build a better world through personal influence and effective teamwork? So that part really matters in regards to how it's designed. And we've really focused on not only those transition years, but also the oldest students and what is being designed, so they don't see it as the same thing that the younger grades are doing. So my last line, sorry, Houston, my last line with that is this. People on this are going to be very familiar with CASEL, the CASEL 5 that we all know so well. You start digging beneath those 5, it's actually not 5. They're great, but it's not 5. It's 30, 40 plus things. The fear would be this. It is very easy with a curricula to go really wide and not go very deep in any specific areas. Where Houston has been described, this is where we're taking the CASEL 5 and going deep so that we can get actual with dosage. We can actually see that impact to get those outcomes that we're going after.
So to tag on to that and to answer, I think, some questions that are coming through in the chat, how does this process then work that allows us to live into these stories, to design equitably, and to create something that is engaging and relevant for students grades 6 through 12? Well, we take those stories and we worked backwards. We said if we have 35 lessons per grade at the middle school level, 25 at the high school level, what does it look like to build around those themes? What are the lessons that are most likely going to teach to those outcomes most effectively? So we built out the scope and sequence. All of that gets inserted into our project center, and from there we go to work, writing out what is this lesson supposed to do in the greater scheme of the story. So every single lesson gets contexted, right? Everything needs to exist within a context. It's easy to pull a bunch of random lessons and put it in one place, but what does it look like to have a narrative arc, a through line? What happens before this? What happens after it? And how does this fit in to the middle? So everyone on our team gets a chance to look at that context developed by our research director, Dr. Brian Smith, who then we get to chance internally to our team to write outlines around that context. What would be two different approaches to arrive at the same conclusion? Now, why would we do that, might you ask? Because we want to give options for educators to look at and to give really practical feedback to us. So we have our Educator Advisory Roundtable. We like to call it EAR for short. And we have educators from around the world, from different backgrounds, from different experience levels, who work in middle schools, who work in high schools, who work outside and work into the education system. And we have these small group meetings where we put in front of them these two different outlines for every single lesson. And every lesson gets educator eyes on it. They give feedback. In fact, they vote. I like this outline over this outline, and here's why. I want to pull this piece from this outline and put it into this outline. You know, in my class, this would work really well, but in my class, this piece wouldn't. Have you thought about this question? Maybe not serving this type of student. So now we have educator eyes filtering through. Does this work in a very reality-based sense? Does this work in my classroom with my experience, my lens? We take that and we filter it through our equity partners at We Collab. Neobly here on the screen talking about how equity-informed curricula need to have a few different key pieces as a part of the puzzle. We put it through that filter. And then we build it. We take the educator feedback and we put it into a lesson itself. But before it will ever arrive to your school, to your district, we put it in front of students. Now, I want to invite some students here in just a moment to join us today. And I'm excited to share with you two different lesson examples, one from our middle school portion and one from our high school portion. And what I want you to look for in these lessons is a consistent structure. Why does that matter? Well, because if we have a limited amount of time on a weekly basis, let's say that's one of the implementation models, probably the most consistent one we see in schools is roughly the weekly 30-minute. We'll talk a bit more about how this can be flexible later, but let's say we're designing for that weekly 30-minute lesson. We know that it can't be one more prep. We know it has to be able to be plug and play, click and go. So we need something that feels really familiar, both to students and to the adults who are delivering it. So you're going to see that there's 5 parts to every lesson. The first one is start. You can think about it like an entry task, and every grade level has a unique entry task experience. There's always going to be something at the end, a little button on the end, some closing thoughts, a final share. And in the middle is the real meat and potatoes of the thing. Community, content, and character. We'll always have an opportunity to focus on relationships and cultivate connection. We'll spend most of our lesson talking about content, delivering content in a way that's experiential or through videos or through discussion. And on the far side, there'll always be a practical way to apply it in the world. That's the character portion. Check it out. Here would be an example of a start intentionally. The 6th grade level, it's a fill in the blank exercise. The students would come in, they know what to do, they're filling in the blanks mentally, and I might call on 1 or 2 people to share. You'll see that there's some get to know you games. I'll role model this menu here in a second. We did it at the top of the webinar to showcase what it looks like to give people choices, to choose their way into an experience. Then we get into the content. This is actually the one we'll be doing today. It's called Here or There. And you'll also find that we have video content to support experiential content. In fact, we made a commitment this year to film all of our own video content, to bring student voices forward and allow them to do some of the teaching alongside you in the classroom. There'll always be a dare to close things out and a final reflection at the end. In fact, I want to introduce you to, at large here, this is our middle school student advisory board. 30 students from around the country with all different sorts of backgrounds and insights and inputs. And I think we actually have a few of them here today. Middle school student advisory board crew, would you turn your cameras on? Lovely. We got Nathan in the room. Spencer's here. Alyssa, hello. Welcome. I'm so happy to see you. Good to see your smiling faces. I'm really excited. I think we actually have one more here. Kylie, I believe, is in the room, and Maxwell. Let's see. Here's Maxwell. Hello, my friend. Good to see you. And it looks like Kylie is here as well. Amazing. Well, everyone in the chat, would you welcome our middle school advisory board? These students have been incredible. They're from literally all over the place. And for the past 10 weeks, we've had a chance to meet with this student advisory board to get their input, their insights, their conversations, what they want to hear more of, what they want to see less of. And every single session we build, we put in front of them for their feedback. In fact, we're going to role model what one of those lessons looks like right now. This is actually session 7 from 6th grade. And it's called the Character Dare. In fact, it's the first time we introduce what we like to call the Character Dare, a practical way to apply our character in the world. Let's check it out. So think about how you'd fill in the blanks. One thing I like that a lot of people don't is blank. And one thing I've practiced a lot is blank. Nathan, how would you fill in these blanks?
Well, I think one thing I like a lot that a lot of people don't like is probably math. I know a lot of my classmates hate math, but I enjoy it. And one thing I've practiced a lot is probably piano maybe, or maybe my bridge skills.
Your bridge skills. Nathan surprises me every time, y'all. I knew about the piano, but you play bridge?
Yeah.
That is incredible. I'm so excited. Well, I'm grateful for your love of math. Maybe it helps you both in your piano playing and in your bridge skills. But I'm glad you're here today, Nathan. Thanks for joining, my friend. Now we get a chance to, not only does that give me some insight into Nathan's world, but we can use our community building menu to try to get to know each other even a little bit better. So today's recommendation is 4 corners, but we can do anything we want. In fact, Kylie, would you unmute? Which of the 4 activities would you like to play today?
Category, 7 categories.
Ooh, it's a good one. So I click there just to show you what I'm doing. I'm clicking right on 7 categories, and it takes me to that activity. Now, Kylie, you get 2 more choices. You get to choose what category of question you want to answer, and then you'll choose a number after that.
Okay, how about what if?
What if? Okay, 1 through 7.
6.
6. If you could talk to your pet for 5 minutes, Kylie, what would you ask them?
My dog does not listen very well, so I'd ask them why they don't listen and if they could listen better to their commands.
So the first opportunity you'd have to talk to your dog, your question is, why haven't we talked more often? Why aren't you a good listener?
Yeah, very
what do you very stubborn? What do you think, what's your dog's name?
Maisie.
Maisie. What do you think your dog would say to that question?
She'd probably have some sassy thing because I have gotten some eye rolls. And she looks at me before she does something naughty. So knowing her, it would probably be something not very nice.
That is hilarious. Maisie sounds like a real treat, Kylie. Thank you for sharing. So people who are watching, you can see how this works. I can jump around to different questions here. I can go back and I can choose a different category. The idea here is simply to give students practical choices to engage in that act of building connection. And as you can tell from Kylie and I's conversation, I learned a lot about Kylie and Maisie in a short period of time. And now we can jump into the content of the lesson. What's cool about sections like this community building area is it's flexible. Depending on how much time you have, or if maybe your SEL sessions are broken up over multiple days, you can just use the relationship building menu, and you can expand or contract that over whatever period of time meets your needs. Then we get into the content section here. This one is called Here or There. The objective is built right into the slide. The goal here is to talk about the differences between what we prefer and what we practice. So let's start with having one person answer this question. What's the difference between your personality and your character? Alyssa, what would you say?
I would say personality is probably more of like the traits and like kind of the person you want to be, like the way you act and stuff. And character is more like all of your, I guess, values and like the things that are like super important to you, like to your core kind of.
I like that, to your core. Alyssa, what would be one of those things like to your core that would be important to you?
One thing that's super important to me is my family. We travel a lot together. We're like really, really close. So I think that would be something that kind of like makes me who I am, which is part of my character, I guess.
Yeah, caring about your family. Cool. Thanks, Alyssa. So it sort of sets the stage for what we're going to talk about today. And just so I can call it out as I go, I want to note a couple of the implementation supports here. You'll notice on this slide, there's an icon. It looks like a little discussion box in the number 2. This is just to support the implementation in the class. That the idea here is, in order to keep this within the 30-minute window, is that this conversation would be about 2 minutes. This is a discussion slide for about 2 minutes, which is different than this slide, which is just a read slide. A student could read it, or you, the educator, could read it. I'll go ahead and read it today. Well, there's lots of ways to think about the differences between personality and character. One way to think about it is this. Personality is what you prefer. Character is what you practice. So this is a read slide here. I'll keep going with them. We're going to do an activity to help us see what our peers prefer. It's a tongue twister. In each round, you'll have 3 options: here, there, or share. So I'll read off a few prompts, and for each you can choose to go here, which is one side of the room, there, the other side of the room, or share, which would be in the middle. For today, you can type it in since we're in the virtual world. And I might ask after 1 or 2 rounds why you chose the choice you did. So in the chat, here, there, or share. Here, I really like watching movies. There, I really like reading. Share, I like both equally. Nice. Here, there, share, share, here, there, there. Share. Let's do another one. This one, by the way, is an action slide, which has people moving or doing something in the classroom. Here, I like when there's lots of people. There, I like spending time alone. Share, I like both equally. There, share, share. Maxwell, why did you say share? Why do you like both equally?
Well, I'm a very social person and I like talking to people, but there are also times when I like to just be alone.
Yeah. What is your idea of recharging?
Probably a nice book, some hot chocolate.
Yeah, sign me up. I couldn't agree more, Maxwell. That is awesome. We'll do one more. Here, I like talking to others. There, I like listening to others. Share, I like both equally. Share, share, there, share, share, share. I love seeing the diversity of different opinions and preferences here in the room, so we can go ahead and find our virtual seat. Now, inside the lesson itself, at this point in the lesson, there would be a video introducing the character dare concept that I'm about to introduce to you. We have adult hosts alongside student hosts in order to set up that content in a way that makes it easy to understand and delivered in a way where you, the educator, don't have to do some of that heavy lifting. But for today, we'll end with this, what we call our character dare process. The dare is a challenge, a way for us to put what we just talked about today into practice. Right? Character is a practice versus personality, which is a preference. So the dare today coming out of our session is to practice gratitude by writing a 1-sentence note to someone in your family, telling them one thing you are grateful for about them, to leave it somewhere they'll find. That's the dare. That's what we're offering students to practice leaving the session. And there's a couple of questions. I can click here to bring those on. And there's a question here today. Who will you be writing your note to, and why do you think they'll appreciate it? Spencer, how would you answer that question?
I would probably write it to my dad because recently for his work, he times track and cross country meets. So he's been having to travel a lot recently. And so he hasn't been spending quite as much time at home. And so I think I would write to him just to show that I appreciate that.
That's awesome. Is he timing it for you, Spencer? Are you a part of that track team?
No, he does high school and college level.
Oh,
Is
wow.
what
So
he
this is like a
times
part of
most
his passion. Cool. Well, I'm sure he would really appreciate that note. And then at the end of the session, there'll always be a little question related to the dare itself. So one person will share one way they'll remind themselves to do the dare before the next time we meet. Students, if you wouldn't mind in the chat, just go ahead and write one way that you're going to remind yourself to write that note. And before we meet next week, I dare you, each of you, to write that note. Spencer, I'll be checking in next week when we get together. Amazing. Do me a favor, everyone. And would you please give it up for the Middle School Student Advisory Board students in the chat? A little celebration for them. They are the very best. Middle school crew, you can turn your cameras off. Thank you so much for being here and bringing your insights and passions. So just so you all who are watching this know, that would be the sort of thing that we would actually do with students during our Student Advisory Board panel. We would meet, and they have a feedback protocol called I like, I wonder, I suggest. And every video, every lesson gets put in front of them, and they use this feedback protocol to tell us what works. Let's do more of that. Or where are there gaps? Or this is confusing. I suggest asking the question this way. And they all have incredible insights to offer, much like our high school advisory board. I want to show you just a little bit of a different paced lesson, a different style lesson at the high school level. In fact, just to role model once again, the structure is going to be really similar from middle school to high school. They still have those core components that we believe in, an entry task and exit, and community content character in between. But you'll notice that the look, the style, the feel, very different. The high school level, much like the middle school level, we have all of our own self-produced videos, but the look of them are different. The feel of them, the conversations, the tone shifts a lot. We have adult hosts who we hope are engaging and relevant to young people. We have folks like Samir, who's a YouTube creator here in Los Angeles. Parvati, the best Survivor player of all time. Ryan, the founder of Neurogum. Ari, who is Eliza in Hamilton. These are the sorts of people we pair up with young people, students their age, to have meaningful, authentic conversations where bi-directional learning is happening. So student voice is at the center, supported by role models along the way. So today I want to introduce you to some students from our high school advisory board. Bring it in. We got Lucy here in the building. Kylie, Ashvini is here. Hello. I'm so excited to see you. Welcome. Zandra's here. Let's see. I think we have Aisha in the room. Who else? That's the team. Hi, everyone. How are you? I'm so pumped. Just so you all know, the octopus on Lucy's head, that is Octobro, a honorary member of the high school student advisory board. And we have a range of students here today who will help us walk through this session. Session 3, about community agreements. As a quick stage set, at every grade level, we will go through a community agreements process. Why is that important? Well, we know it is one of the best ways to bring a lot of voices forward. We know that people support the things that they help build. And if one of our outcomes is around belonging, well, we have to involve student voice in creating the expectations that are going to be in that classroom experience. At the 9th grade level, this is a 9th grade sample session. The 9th grade level, the entry task is always a word related to what they're going to experience in that session. Typically, it's a non-English word. Here's a good one: Kumba, a Swahili word that means doing as much as we can in the way that we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. So here's my prompt. Kylie, what is one thing you want to improve in the world?
I think that I just want people to be more empathetic toward others. So just feeling with others, even if they can't necessarily relate, I think that would really improve the world and where we are today.
I couldn't agree more. And I love the way you just described empathy as feeling with. We should teach that more often. Thank you, Kylie. Much like the middle school sessions, we have our own community building menu. And at each grade level, the content of these changes out. In fact, we have lots of different activities. Some of them will repeat between middle school and high school, but the content inside of them are different. And even within middle school to high school, all the different activities themselves are actually different within high school and middle school. You'll also notice on the right-hand side here that throughout the year, we're going to do activity drops. Simple new activities to infuse life and make it exciting and relevant throughout the year, and get feedback from students on what they like so we can provide more of that experience. Let's go, Lucy. Lucy, which one would you want to play today?
Let's go with picture prompts.
Picture prompts. It's a good one. The idea behind this: you choose a number, it reveals an image, and you prompts a short share from you based on what you see in that image.
All right, I guess today's March 30th, so let's go with 30.
Yeah, it's a good justification. Lucy, what comes to mind when you look at this?
Oh, wow. Something that actually comes to mind is just kind of like a moment of zen and like taking in a moment to really feel like you're living. I think especially right now with Zoom, we're hopping from meetings to meetings and just going like back to back and everything. So this image really just makes me think of like taking a moment to appreciate the small things in life and truly feel human and live.
I saw a lot of head nods there from John and the students alike. Like, yes, maybe we all need a tactical pause, a mindful moment in between the madness. Great share, Lucy. Thank you. So you can see Lucy could have chose this number or a different number or an entirely different number, and they might breed very different conversations. I come back to the menu here, and we could play a whole lot of other things like Four Corners. 7 categories. Would you rather? For today, let's jump into the content itself. The activity is called What Do We Need? And the goal is to create a sense of classroom agreements about how we show up in these lessons together. So again, we got a read slide here. What are classroom agreements? Well, for us in this room, there are a list of 3 to 5 things we need in order to feel safe and successful in this space. We should all have a voice in how we want to be treated. So let's have one person answer these questions. Describe a space where you felt like you weren't respected. Why? And number 2, what would it look like if in that same context you felt respected? Xandra, how would you answer this question?
Well, the space where I haven't felt respected is just like some group projects. I feel like I've just been like talking over and like they just didn't really consider my ideas. But in the same context, if everyone like gives everyone an equal chance to say something and contribute to their to the idea and group project, I feel like I would have felt way more respected.
It's a great reflection when people feel like they're like you have valuable things to offer, but they're moving ahead with their idea. The steamroller effect. You felt like you've been steamrolled before. Yeah. So in a better environment, you feel like people would have like an equal say in how they get to experience or contribute to a group. I like that. Well, it sets us up nicely for today's conversation, which is how do we want to feel in this space? One of the pieces from the last lesson that we didn't see is this icon right here. This is the Educator share icon. One of the clear pieces of feedback we had from students is that they wanted to know educators better, more personally, not overly personally, but just to get to know how they want to show up or what they care about in the world. So this is a simple vehicle for the educator in the room to share. what would be an example of one agreement that I would need as the educator in the space to be successful with this group? And why it's important to me. Maybe it's when our words hurt, we own it and apologize. Maybe it's just to assume positive intent. Whatever that looks like for you in this moment as the educator, you get a chance to share, which sets us up for students to experience their own piece next. We'll always have vehicles for students if we're going to get into groups to find a group related to that size number. And these are student sourced. We're really thoughtful in how students find the people that they want to spend time with. To go to exactly Xandra's point, we don't always want to be in the same group because maybe that group didn't make me feel as safe as another group. So here is the quick activity, and I know we'll move fast since we're coming up at the end of our time. But using the next slide with your group, each person will share their name and which agreement resonates with you and why. For the purpose of today, I'm going to go ahead and put a list up of community agreements, which, by the way, these were sourced from students themselves. In fact, students in this room, the Student Advisory Board, were some of the people that we pulled these classroom agreements from. So here's what I would like to know. Ashwini, what would be the one agreement here that resonates with you and why?
All right, check.
You sound good.
Great. Okay. So the one that resonates with me would be brave in sharing our truth, because this just brings like a quote that my mother, I don't remember if I can like completely word this right, but essentially she was talking about just kind of trying to find yourself and be true to who you are and everything that you do, because like somewhere out there, someone will be like supportive of you, even if, you know, that person isn't in the room. Maybe they're across the world seeing you on screen, being like, oh, I resonate with that. And so if you are like, you take the time to be super brave and just put yourself out there, like good things will come out of it.
I love that. First of all, family, it's filled with some smart people. That is good wisdom. Second of all, I love your justification that sometimes like our bravery in one room, well, that might not be seen or recognized there, doesn't mean that it's not worth like standing up for that truth. And sometimes that requires the most courage when we know that there are people in the room who don't see our same truth. Really beautifully put. Thank you, Ashwini. So on the far side of this would be one of two sessions. In fact, the next lesson would allow the group to come to a solidified list, a list of 3 to 5 things that the group agrees would be the most important for this group. And then we would talk about what does it look like to hold each other accountable, to call each other in, as opposed to call each other out when it comes to making sure that we hold true to those community agreements. To end, 2 people will share 2 things. One word they want others to feel in a space, and one thing that they would believe would help someone feel that way. I see that we got Rodrigo here, we got Taylor here, we got all kinds of friends in the building. I'm going to ask Taylor and Rodrigo to answer this question. What's a word you want someone to feel, and one thing that would help them feel that way? Let's start with you, Taylor.
I think one word I would want people to feel is belonging. And I think that one way that we can help to make everyone feel like they belong is, I think, by inviting people and always just like waving and smiling. And I think especially during quarantine, it's really hard to do that because we can't always talk with each other and like be near each other. But I think by like smiling and always waving, and then any way that we can welcoming one another, it can help everyone to feel seen and heard. And I think that that is really powerful and helpful in making everyone feel like they belong.
Thank you, Taylor. So well said. And you lived that really, really well, my friend. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
While Rodrigo's answer, would other students here, would you answer this in the chat while Rodrigo answers it out loud?
Okay, so the word that I want the others to feel in this space is kindness, because I think kindness is like something like very important when it's about, meeting another people, because it gives you like another perspective and a good perspective too.
I love that, Rodrigo. The idea that kindness, when practiced, gives you perspective on someone else's experience. And it does sound like, while we don't have a camera, Aisha, you're here as well?
Yeah, I would say empowerment, because it's a key aspect of growing together with others.
I love that. What would you say? What would be something that you might practice that makes other people feel empowered?
Supporting other people's ideas, even though they might not align with yours. You can still see like there's some good parts to their ideas.
Yeah, look for the good instead of naturally looking for the critique. That's hard. That's good, Aisha. I love that. And that's the end. Now, we went through both of these lessons in a pretty fast pace, but I wanted to give you a sense of what a middle school contrasted with a high school felt like, and recognize sort of the different environment, the different approaches, and yet the philosophical vertical alignment, the philosophical through line. Would you all give a big round of applause to our high school student advisory board? They are amazing. Thank you for joining, and thanks for your wisdom. I'll see you all next week. Can't wait to visit again soon. Bye, team. Bye, Xander. Bye, Taylor. See you, Rodrigo. Bye, Lucy. Jen, aren't they the greatest?
Yes, reminds me of being in the classroom. I won't always admit, but ninth grade in particular was like my favorite group of students to work with. I love ninth grade.
Absolutely. And the high school students go through the same process the middle schoolers do, which is to give that feedback protocol. So every lesson we create gets put in front of students to say, do you like this? Does this make sense? Is this resonating? What would you change? Change this question, change this word, so that it is truly students at the table helping to create it. A couple final things as we wrap up, and I apologize for going over time, but I wanted to not deny the experience of that full lesson so you could see what it looks like. And we invited those students to be a part of it, and I just want to make them shine at all times because they're so smart, so wise, and have so much to give. I do want to let folks know that we'll drop into the chat here a link to our scope and sequence so you can see what those, at least the session titles, look like right now, which might provide you with some good context to ask some questions. In fact, to book a call with us or to drop us an email to make sure that what we are providing is meeting your needs. If the conversations like this are helpful, we do have our school culture conferences. We host them roughly every month, and it's designed to think about implementing this work more deeply over time. Designed to support you and other people on your staff to go to work, to build this in, to create some of that readiness, some of that buy-in that we know is going to be really essential to driving this work forward. John and I co-lead those together, and our next one is on April 29th.
We bring it.
We bring it. Yeah. John brings it and I try to keep up. That's sort of my philosophy. When John's at a level 10, it makes me want to be a level 11. So please join us for one of those dates coming up. They're really solid days filled with all kinds of great tools, low burden, high impact. A couple final things before we get to some questions, John, just so people know, some updating upcoming webinars. We have April 8th talking about purposeful people, our elementary toolkit. April 13th is the beginning of our administrators mastermind group.
We still have some spots.
We have a few spots remaining there, and it has been such a well-received, such a solid experience to support administrators during this time. And as I mentioned, April 29th is that school culture conference.
Direct quote from the mastermind group this last week, because we're in our first one. The most meaningful experience I've had as an administrator in all my years is that mastermind process that they're going through.
Yeah. Well, it's peers supporting peers through an intentional process. There's rarely anything better. As John begins answering some questions, please book a call if you want to go deeper on this conversation. And of course, you can request a quote. We'll drop both of those links. But in the chat, share one thing that you are leaving most excited about today, about some of the ways that we're approaching the work or some of the tools that you want to get your hands on. Go ahead and drop that into the chat, and John will answer some of the questions I know have been coming through.
All right, you ready? This is not going to be long. I'm going to time myself, Houston. There's some good questions. Are you ready? Or do you want to read some of the comments first?
No, you get after it.
Fire. Okay, here we go.
You get after it.
Here we go. All right. More around logistics. Are all the lessons, like 35 for middle, 25 for high school, created in this format? The answer is yes. It's web-based with slide decks in English and in Spanish. How do we know how the curriculum aligns with CASEL? Well, we'll have documentation on that. We can show you both the CASEL alignment as well as the Counselor ASCA framework as well. Does the curriculum have all of the instructional PowerPoints embedded? So not only will there be the slide decks, we will also have, we always do have different kind of instructional or support overview type slide decks that in different places will be there to support you. How are the lessons organized? Daily, weekly, the time frame? A good rule of thumb, we put it in the chat, is 30 minutes, but these lessons have been designed to expand or contract as needed. Some of our schools are 30 minutes once a week. Some of our schools meet 4 times a week for 12 to 15 minutes each time. You would still look at it as one lesson focus for the week, but they've been designed in a way to work in both of those types of settings. Even if you meet 1 time a week, but it's 50 minutes, how do we use it there? I would say reach out to us. We can support you in how you can use the same lesson in those different ways. This has been one of the big shifts that we made when COVID started, the ability to expand or contract as needed. And so we can talk through that with you and help you out. How do I book PD for my staff? The easiest way is to email either info@characterstrong.com or pd@characterstrong.com. Both will get you to where you need to be. And we are booking dates fast now for even in August. So reach out to us, let us know what date you're looking at, and we'll protect that for you. Is the sample lesson linked above something we already have access to if our school has already purchased the full curriculum? Right now it's a samples experience, but I believe our team put in the chat, as they start to be finalized with design and the different web-based components, they'll start to show up for planning purposes. But the entire curriculum, the goal is the end of June, will be up there for you. And yes, you will automatically get access to it if you have already purchased the curriculum. That's something that's important to us. It's not a separate cost. It's a part of your normal renewal, any updates that we make. Let's see. If we have advisory curriculum, will we automatically get access? Yes. Has your curriculum always been digitally based, or is it this a new format? It always has been. Slide decks in English and in Spanish. Main reason for that is to help with ease of implementation. You don't have to worry about making a bunch of copies. You don't have to worry about getting a bunch of materials. Those are all major roadblocks if it is a true tier 1 curricula. So it is built to be as plug and play as possible. And we can support that with the adult professional development that we can do right alongside it. What is the price? Well, one, reach out to us for a quote. But if you're a traditional comprehensive school, either middle school or high school, the upfront is $3,999, but then it drops. The annual renewal drops to $699 in year 2, which if you're ordering even now, this spring, that renewal would not come around until August of 2022. So this is extra planning time. Your 1 year does not start right now in this moment if you were to order today. There are discounts. There's discounts for multiple schools, like a district purchase. There's discounts for really small schools. Reach out to us, as well as bundling discounts of bringing, professional development alongside the advisory curriculum and the leadership curriculum. There's different types of discounts we can apply. Implementation questions. Is the curriculum both in English and in Spanish? Yes. Question. So if I wanted to incorporate this as a school counselor with 6th to 8th grade during a period that wouldn't disrupt their academics, this upcoming year, once a week, would it be feasible to do? I work in a small school. Yes. Although it's designed to be a tier 1 curricula, which remember tier 1 is what are all staff engaging in, right? And what are all students being exposed to? Many of our schools still do the counselor push-in model where the counselor is the main deliverer. This would work for that scenario as well. So reach out to us. Here's a big one. How can we convince staff that it is worthy of their time? That is a big question, isn't it? I'm going to give you 4 steps for now in this shorter time, and then I would encourage you to reach out. Number 1, make sure that you have an implementation team. The research is very clear. You need a team that's going to be guiding this at your building level. Also at the district level, that's a different webinar. We'll be talking about that with our implementation roadmap, but that's number one. Number two, that you work your way through an intentional set of pre-implementation steps. When you think about a recipe metaphor, what is the recipe? The recipe doesn't have one ingredient, it's going to have multiple ingredients. And I want you to create a readiness to implement plan that increases three things: awareness, knowledge, and motivation. And we can support you with that to implement the thing. In this case, it's social emotional learning, CharacterStrong. But this is just good implementation with anything that you're rolling out. So that's number two. You need to work through some really intentional pre-implementation steps. Too many schools, it's like we get to 2 weeks before the beginning of the year, we do kind of a PD thing, and then we're going. And it's like, no, there was multiple steps that we could have done before that, and we can support you as a guide with what those steps should be. Number three, make time for staff readiness work. And what I mean by that is we need to bring the why and the how side by side. Both are needed. We need to think about your experience. If all we do is one of those two, in both cases, it's a problem. So if all we do is talk about the why, but we don't give staff a how that is doable, we got a problem. And the problem is that all you're doing is reminding me once again of the weight of this work, but you're not giving me a way to do it. That's frustrating. On the other side, if we assume that we've got the why and all we do is talk about the how, and we don't really intentionally braid in the why, we also have problems. And the number one problem that happens there, this is definitely one more thing on my plate. So we need to bring both of those two together. Finally, we need to hit both the head and the heart. So how do we make it like worth our time? We got to hit the head. Let's give them the research that shows the difference between academic engagement, and time dedicated to instruction. Big difference. A lot of times, especially at the high school level, we think we've got engagement and we don't. We've got time dedicated to instruction. Number one way to increase engagement, right, is go after that environment, those foundational supports, the relational work. If we can increase engagement and show that, the head part, the research, that we're actually gaining back time, it's really hard to argue that. But we also got to get the heart. We got to connect educators to their why, and we got to connect them to the why of the work. And right now we have an opportunity, a huge opportunity to hit that why, because all you got to do is look around you. All you got to do is look around to see why this work is so needed right now. So those are 4 steps on how we can help to convince staff, but you got to make time for that staff readiness work. That part is critical. Someone said, I love that it's PBIS, SEL, restorative practices, trauma-informed. That confusion, all of those things is real. How do you help that braiding make sense? I want you to think once again about the recipe metaphor. As a school team, what is your recipe? What are the key ingredients that you can clearly articulate what that recipe has in terms of the ingredients? And then this is the intentional implementation work that is needed. Probably one of the most practical things is schools that literally have a visual of their tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 supports. And that visual will show how those different parts of their tier 1, for example, braid together. That visual can be powerful in the way that it's rolled out, that we keep coming back to it. That would be a suggestion on ways that you could show that braiding. Let's see, I'm curious about schools, middle school in particular, who have implemented your program. What positive changes have they seen as far as improved grades and decreased discipline? Reach out to us. We can send you some different overall articles, but here's the thing. Once we updated the curricula, right, then you have the new studies that need to happen. And so we've presented to you today our theory of change that Dr. Brian Smith has brought forward, that we're really looking to increase well-being, belonging, and engagement. Those are the things that we're going after, because we know that if those 3 things are being addressed, a lot of other positive things are happening underneath. But there's a lot of research articles to show that if a social emotional learning curricula that is research backed is being implemented with fidelity, with the proper supports, that it has that direct impact on academics, behavior, attendance across the board. Multiple questions were around equity. How do you include student, parent, family voice in the design of the lessons? By including them as key stakeholders in the process of actually creating the curriculum, not afterwards, what do you think? But that is key. The other thing is remembering that this is a foundational SEL curriculum. Every school's in a different place. Every educator's in a different place. We want to create the foundation so that open, honest, empathetic conversations can be had in your schools. A lot of schools already have other things that they're doing to go deeper, depending on where they're at. We want to really create that foundation, and Houston did a great job today of explaining both process and outcome as a part of that equity focus in the creating of this curricula. How do you incorporate an equity lens so these experiences don't default to white and cisgender, but allow for many identities and experience? Number one, by including young people and adults who don't represent only white and cisgender perspectives in the actual creating of the curricula. Not afterwards, what do you think? In the actual creation, to make sure that they see themselves, not only visually, but in the examples, in the stories that are told. That is critical. There was a question, I think this is near the end here, or comment, and anxiety or depression. Are they best categorized as mental illness? Not always. We put it in the chat. We like to think of mental health as a continuum. You can have mental illness and be mentally healthy. And you cannot have mental illness and be in a state where your mental health isn't healthy as well. It's a continuum. We approach it that way. Dr. Brian Smith has been in this work for quite some time related to that. And a huge focus of this update is on that well-being aspect. All right, Houston, a lot of questions. It's 10 minutes, longer than I wanted it to be, but we did get through them. Reach out if we can help in any way. Answer questions, set up a call to talk through your specific situation. This is critical work, and we can support it through a holistic lens, the adult work, the implementation work, and engaging and relevant curricula.
I'm sweating just from excitement from listening to you. Thanks for all the wisdom. Thank you for the engagement in the chat. Thank you. A huge thank you to the team behind the scenes, answering all kinds of questions and setting us up for success today. And a huge thank you to our student advisory board students who are rock stars. Love showcasing them, their voice, because this is what it's about. It's about helping walk alongside them and learn this stuff alongside them, because we all got work to do when it comes to this. This has been recorded today. We will pass along the recording so you can showcase this, rewatch poll segments, or showcase it to folks from your school, your district. And as always, send us a note if you have something, or book a call. We can chat more. Grateful for you all today and your work. Let's keep doing this, John. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do this again sometime.
Let's do this again sometime. Thanks, y'all. See you soon.